Hey there, it's Seriously Sydney from SydtheIllustrator, and today we're working on this cool perspective drawing. So I kind of started out with an outline, I made a cross in the center with a center point, and then I drew lines from the center point up with not super accuracy. And I'm messing around with the different angles and seeing how things work out. And right now this drawing is based off of a poem by Robert Frost called Into the Unknown, or titled Into the Unknown, and that was the inspiration behind this. And yeah, I'm kind of starting out trying to get this signpost right, just trying to get the general base sketch down, working in not a Faber-Castell sketchbook, what is this? A Royal Langnickle A4 sketchbook. Just kind of messing around. My materials are just very random. I'm using a couple different, they are called mechanical pencils. I like the blue one because if you shake it, it's got a little weight that advances the lead instead of having to click the back button on the back where the eraser is. That one's pretty cool. And then the other one's just a normal one. It's got a larger eraser though than the blue one. So that's the materials I'm using for right now. And the goal here is to create to create depth because I'm doing a perspective drawing, and also to test out the different camera angles as I mentioned before. I had a little bit of difficulty differentiating between the trees in this main sketch part because I was using same size lead in both pencils and the same softness. I believe they're both HB lead. And here's where I bring out my random assortment of pencils. So there are some, let's see if I can show you right here. There you go. So these are some Prismacolor Watercolor pencils. I use a couple of those to add just hints of color, like the sun setting in the distance. And then, let's see here, use the orange, and then I forget what color yellow I used. It doesn't really matter, I'm just adding color. And then I added a little bit of the red. And here I'm going in with just a 2H pencil to get the character's dress all detailed. I wasn't really sure how I wanted it done, so I was using a very light pencil. Trying to see how many patterns I could get. I did have some slight difficulty with this character because I wasn't exactly sure how to draw her in line with the perspective. So this drawing would be considered a one-point or single-point perspective drawing because there is one vanishing point. And the idea with this, I tried to create a slight cone shape to the drawing so that it would seem like it would remind you something of a tunnel or a forest like closing in. I thought that would be really neat. Here I'm just starting to shade with various pencils. The brands are all over the place. There's some Kimberly, there's some no-name brand, there's some what is it? I think I do end up using a charcoal pencil somewhere. There's, I believe, a Daler and Rowney pencil being used. Like, it's all over the place. And I'm going in, so the deepest color I use, other than the carbon pencil, which I do end up using, is this 9B pencil, the really thick one right there. And I'm using that just to try and get my darks in so that I can add depth. You can kind of see here where I'm trying to lay in, okay, this is going to be the darkest dark, these are going to be a little bit lighter, and so on and so forth. This close tree right here, the biggest, most detailed one, because it's so close to you, I had a little bit of a difficulty adding detail to. So I was like, okay, I wanted some branches here, some branches there, and then it just kind of ended up blending into the background a bit. And I think I went in with too many midtones and I didn't leave enough highlights, and or I made it too dark too quickly, if that makes sense. So I believe the pencil I'm holding right now is a carbon pencil. It has a very unique texture. It's nothing like graphite or charcoal. It's very harsh, almost brittle. It kind of reminds me of using if you've used a dry erase marker, very dry one, and trying really, really hard to get it to write. Or like a felt tip marker that's run out of ink. I do like the detail. Right here I end up using a regular ballpoint pen, I think it's an old Pilot ballpoint pen, to really differentiate the tree from the background. This is kind of just a random sketch in my sketchbook. And for you guys, if you guys are going to end up doing a graphite sketch like this, I would suggest picking your tones out first, and then going in and start with the darkest areas, and then slowly like blend that out. So I tried to start with the dark and the mid-tone areas and leave the highlights alone, but that didn't end up working out too much. You can see right here I'm like going back in and trying really hard with this carbon pencil to define the darkest darks and the lightest lights. I think in some cases I overdid it. Gradual differences probably would have been better to give this a very not homogenized but well thought out look. It seems a bit rough when you look at it. I wanted it to be a little bit smoother. So I come in with this other pencil and then it's like, oh, I can do clouds, that'd be neat. Yeah, that is a Royal Langnickle pencil. So yeah, pencils from all sorts of brands. I would have to say the clouds are my favorite part of this drawing. They were so much fun to do, and I applied the whole thing of, hey, maybe I should work at this gradually instead of going in crazy. It's like, oh, I'll work this up very gently, very gradually, going from like 2H or 2B or whatever, and moving slowly up to the darker colors. And what do you know? Following some of those rules actually work. Now, right about here is where I kind of went, I believe I went wrong with the little character right there. I don't think I should have outlined her. I think that outlining her messed her up a little bit. Because I didn't draw her all that well. I was like, oh, this will look kind of right. And I didn't follow all the lines of perspective when drawing her. So it turned out very uniquely. Something I didn't know before this drawing was that ballpoint pen doesn't really go over carbon pencil very well. So maybe that might help you guys out. I think what it does is it creates such a barrier that ink doesn't really get to sit on the paper, it kind of just brushes it off. Here we have the Himi gouache, or yeah, I'm gonna call it Himi, yeah, something like that. And I took my spray bottle and I sprayed it, sprayed all of them because this had been sitting for a very long time. And I closed it back up to let it sit for a good 5-10 minutes or so. Right here I'm taking this dry paintbrush and I am using it to blend out the clouds, to make the clouds a little bit softer and more cloud-like. And then I go back in and I try to smooth out some of the harsher details in this drawing. Right here, this is a pastel, that was a white pastel pencil, and it did pretty much nothing. I had built up the layers so much already that it didn't really do much. There's not enough texture for it to grab onto. Blending and smoothing this out did help a little bit. And here we go, I am going to be using the black. And the paintbrush I'm using is, I believe, a Royal, I believe it's a Royal Langnickle brush. What kind is it? It's black Taklon, I believe. And I'm just kind of giving this a border. I was trying to picture it like if you were to have a book cover or something like that, how would it look? So, or how would I want it to look? Or if you get those like little pamphlets, so it's, or like, how would you describe it? You know when you made those little books out of normal paper, like printer paper and whatever, and you just kind of stapled them together and put whatever in it? This would be a cover to one of those. That was the idea. And the single poem which inspired this would be on the inside of it or on the back side of the piece of paper. That was the inspiration behind it, or inspiration, I guess is what you could call it. That was the thought. I let this major tree in front, the largest one, extend past the border. I was like, hey, that might be neat. And then I brought the black gouache into the rest of the drawing itself to help define the deepest darks, because I had lost those a little bit with the blending. And in some cases I never actually had it in the first place. And then the shadow on the left side. I really like the way that turned out. Right here, this tree, that is my favorite tree out of this entire drawing. Okay, now we get to this part. This is where I want to add highlights, but I try to get these highlights to match the color of the paper so that it doesn't stick out too much. So I'm going with the leftover paint, my mixing tray from the last painting, and I'm just trying to mix a tone that's close to the color of the paper. And looking at it in the video, you can't really tell. I mean, in certain parts you can. In other parts it blends in much better. And here I'm signing the piece, so we're nearly done. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to see more, remember to hit the bell icon, and I will see you next time.